Hello everybody and welcome back to the Sideline Tater YouTube channel, and today we're going to be looking at my Premier League predictions for this past season. So stay tuned, see how many I get right. What were my thoughts? I posted a video that was like an hour and a half long way back. Comment your thoughts on my predictions, how you did in general, how crazy some of my takes are. What do you think my craziest take was? Comment what you're most excited about for next Premier League season.
20th, Bournemouth. 19th, Fulham. And 18th, Southampton. 2 promoted teams going down. Also Southampton going down.
So I got Bournemouth wrong. 0-1 to start. Kind of a tough look, but not the end of the world because a lot of people predicted Bournemouth to go down. They didn't invest a lot of money. They brought in some championship players. It looked kind of patchy. They had Scott Parker at the wheel to start the season. We thrashed them 9-0 to start the season. I thought my prediction was going to be spot on when we beat them 9-0, but they prevailed and they continued and they persisted. And credit to Gary O'Neill and credit to Bournemouth because a lot of their players really did well. But it really hurts me to see my predictions go off to a poor start. Bournemouth finished 15th, and I got to give them all the credit in the world. They had a really good turnaround after Scott Parker, and honestly, they surprised a lot of people. 19th, Fulham. True position, 10th. So I got this one really wrong. I really didn't get the Fulham prediction right for this past season. I thought they were going to capitulate. I thought they would go straight down. I thought they were going to yo-yo again. They didn't yo-yo. In my predictions video, I called Mitrovic a decent striker. And honestly, Marco Silva and Fulham are just, proving me wrong every game. So that kind of sucks. But I did note that João Palhinha could be an interesting player, but I did call it a, quote, lateral move from Frank Zambo Anguissa. In a way, the transfer of João Palhinha and the sale of Frank Zambo Anguissa is kind of a win-win for both parties, all parties really, all 4 of them. Fulham has a good DM. João Palhinha is playing steady minutes in a mid-table Premier League team. Frank Zambo Anguissa went to Napoli. They got a new center mid. He won the Serie A. They're both kind of progressing. And I got it right, I guess, but this doesn't count. 0-2 to start. Very, very tough start for me. 0-2 is rough. Not only does that mean I'm 0-2, that means I could potentially predict none of the relegation teams to get accurately relegated. 18th, Southampton. True position, 20th. Southampton. It pains my heart that Southampton got relegated. I really like Southampton. I have a feeling, they were kind of like stagnating under Hasenhüttl. It didn't seem like they were off to a great start. Southampton appointed Nathan Jones after they sacked Hasenhüttl, which was a kind of questionable decision in the time. And throughout the course of the season, it only proved to be even more questionable. So it didn't really go well. And then they bring in Ruben Selles, who comes in later in the season and just kind of steers them into the bottom of the table. I didn't get Southampton's position right. I did predict them as an accurately relegated team, so for what that's worth, I guess, that kind of counts. But overall, this one just kind of sucks because I didn't want them to go down. I predicted them to go down, but I didn't even get the right position. So 0-3, horrible start.
17th, though, Nottingham Forest. Newly promoted under Steve Cooper.
17th, Nottingham Forest. True position, 16th. So I had some interesting takes on this situation. I thought that Steve Cooper and Jesse Lingard were going to do numbers at Nottingham Forest. Mind you, this was before Morgan Gibbs-White signed for Nottingham Forest. So I wasn't aware of him coming into the fray, but ultimately Lingard had a very forgettable season. But Nottingham Forest did finish right around 17th. But I got it wrong again because I'm horrible, I guess. Really bad at predicting stuff. So credit to them. I like Nottingham this season. They were really hard to play against, but hope I could get their spot right next season. Fingers crossed. We'll see.
16th, Brentford. Well, I'm sorry, Thomas Frank, but I think this is think this is a bit of a year of exposure for him.
16th, Brentford. True position, 9th. Brentford. Thomas Frank. Oh man, this one hurts because I wasn't giving Brentford any credit at the start of the season. I thought that they were going to have a case of second season syndrome, and they didn't. They almost, got a really high finish this season. They ended up in 9th, and at the end of the season, it was basically like marginal whether they were 9th or like 7th. So I think they had a really great campaign, but I just kind of felt that it wouldn't work out. I remember, and I have it written down here because I have the original book, I wrote hipster ball and just kind of was like, yeah, it's hipster ball. Because that was the new flavor of the month slang in the footy community. And I feel really dumb because they didn't play too bad in the first season. And I just was like, yeah, they're not going to be able to do anything. A lot of it was hinged on the fact that I thought that Ivan Toney wasn't going to stay at the club. I thought he was going to get sold last summer. I filmed the video before the transfer window really closed. If you go back and watch it, there's some weird kind of proclamations I'm making there with certain transfers and just assuming certain things were nailed on when they weren't. So my view of the whole season wasn't fully in focus. But credit to Brentford, amazing season. But that makes me 0 of 5. Yeah, 0 of 5. Amazing start. A quarter of the table gone. Just wrong. Totally out of contention for any chance of me getting it right. So that sucks.
15th. I have Everton. And maybe this is me being a, kind of blindly loyal Liverpool supporter.
15th, Everton. True position, 17th. Man, the Toffees, they stayed up again. I had a feeling they would have a rough season, and I thought they'd be in the lower half of the mid-table or in the relegation zone. And I feel like 15th felt fair from my perspective. I didn't want to be too biased against them. But they finished worse than I thought. They had, right up until the last day, had a real chance of getting relegated. And honestly, I just don't know what to say about Everton as a club. I was grappling with the reality that Everton might get relegated and the Merseyside derby would effectively cease to exist, besides maybe an odd cup appearance. And I kind of felt weird because I don't want them to get relegated because the city of Liverpool would really not benefit from that in any respect. And obviously, while they're rivals, I would want to see both clubs just, at least in the Premier League, to make sure that the city has a good, stable kind of source of an economy. But on the other hand, Everton, they play Liverpool and they play aggressive, and, Verge got injured, and we've had Thiago get injured, and we've had Origi get injured. We've had a lot of players get injured against Everton, so I wouldn't have minded it. But they managed to stay up somehow. So not a great season by any means. They, did awful for long stretches of it. There was several points where it looked like Everton just couldn't produce a goal to save their life. And somehow Sean Dyche comes in. He keeps them up just narrowly. And Goodison Park lives to see another day in the Premier League. The bad news for me is I am now 0 of 6 with predictions. I didn't know that this would be so hard, and I feel really embarrassed that I'm doing so bad. But, come on. I got to get the next one right or something, statistically speaking.
14th, we have Brighton and Hove Albion. Yes. Well, Brighton, another one of the, football hipster teams, so to speak. They're very shrewd with their transfers. Basuma's left them for 25 mil. That's going to be a really tough hole to fill in that squad. Trust me.
14th, Brighton. True position, 6th. Brighton in 14th. Brighton and Hove Albion in 14th. They finished 6th. 8 positions. That is a wide gulf. And I I don't know what to say, because my biggest gripes with Brighton at the start of the season was the fact that they sold Yves Bissouma. They were, in my head at the time, going to sell Marc Cucurella to City, not Chelsea. I thought he was going to City. Bissouma, Cucurella leaving. And I said they had a rather unimpressive window and didn't seem like they signed anyone that good. Brighton had a phenomenal window. They had a phenomenal season. They played out of their skin for the vast majority of the season. They were playing really good football, and a lot of the players they brought in were just not that well known. You know, Buonanotte and Ciso. A lot of these guys were just players that they managed to kind of bring up through the academy or through good scouting, and they do well, and they do amazing for them, and they've played very good football. So I'm really upset with myself that I got this one so wrong. By predicting Brighton wrong, I'm now 0 of 7. So amazing start, really strong. I'll get the next one, I think, right? Like, the next one's got to be right. Right?
13th, Leeds. Got Leeds United under Jesse Marsch. They're another team who, similar to Brighton, I think it's interesting having them next to each other because I think they've gone through similar windows.
13th, Leeds. True position. 19th, Leeds United with Jesse Marsch. In 13th, in my notebook, I only have 2 words written down under my description for what I thought for Leeds United. American Revolution. That was not it. This prediction was so far off the mark. Not only did they sack Jesse Marsch, but they got an even worse manager in, and then they sacked him with limited time to spare in the season and replaced him with Big Sam Allardyce. It's like a Premier League relegation fairy tale that could not be written. It is absolutely surreal what happened at Leeds this season, and them going down is honestly pretty sad to me. But for me to get them so wrong, 13th, they looked so far off 13th for so long in this season. So another awful, awful prediction from me. 0 of 8. 0 of 8. God. 0 of 8 is not good. I can't possibly go 0 of 9, right? Like, I'll get this next one. I can't get like half of the table wrong, right? I have to get this next one. I can't go 0 of 9.
In 12th, we have Leicester City. Well, I don't hate Brendan Rodgers. I don't love him either.
12th, Leicester. True position, 18th. Leicester in 12th. Wow. I mean, wow. There's predictions that don't go 100% right, and then there's bad predictions. And I'm filled with bad predictions for this season. This past season was nothing but bad predictions from me. So far, I've gotten 0 of 9 predictions right. That is spectacularly bad. That is laughably bad. And Leicester City, like, the cracks were there. It was clear that Leicester was a team that was put together with glue and silly putty. It was hanging on by a thread. I mean, injuries to Ricardo Pereira and Wilfred Ndidi kind of put them out for extended periods of time. And Jamie Vardy wasn't scoring as many goals, but I still thought he had a season or 2 left in him. No, he didn't. I thought Yuri Tillman's dip in form at the end of the 2021-2022 season was just something you could write off. And, he wasn't going to kind of just like, down tools in the relegation battle. But that's exactly what he did. He's a free agent coming up, and he looked awful throughout the whole season. He didn't look that impressive. James Maddison is class. I'll give him that. But Jamie Vardy is clearly past it. Soyuncu's leaving on a free. Madison's probably going to leave for a fee. Then you have Yuri Tillmans who's leaving on a free most likely. It's just not that exciting. at Leicester City. It wasn't at the start of the season. They didn't sign that many players. They signed Wout Faes right at the end of the season, and I thought they would still do good. I thought Brendan Rodgers, he was going to do his thing. Brendan stayed in the mix for a very long time this season. Brendan Rodgers just didn't last this season, and honestly, I don't know what the direction with Leicester City is under Dean Smith. It just kind of feels weird. 0 of 9 though. Please let me get this next one right. I just want this next one to be right really bad, because 0 of 10 would be awful. It would destroy me.
11th place, Crystal Palace. Yes, Crystal Palace. They are in 11th for me.
11th, Crystal Palace. True position, 11th. Yes! Let's go. Crystal Palace, 11th. If there's one thing that you can count on in the Premier League, it's Crystal Palace coming 11th. They always come 10th to 12th, or maybe 13th if they're feeling really spicy. But Crystal Palace is genuinely one of the most mid-table teams of all time. They just, they finish in these spots. And I kind of got it. I feel good now. I could still get more than half the table right with this prediction. That's so clutch. No 0 of 10. I could get 11 out of 20 right because I got Crystal Palace right in 11. Let's just talk about their season real quick. Crystal Palace played really good football this season. There were some fun moments with them. There were some moments where some of their players were out with injury. And it was just kind of middle of the road, I would say, at the end of the day. Patrick Vieira, he started the season. He was coaching Crystal Palace. However, he got sacked and replaced with Roy Hodgson, who's actually still having them play really good football, which is surprising coming from Roy because, he's so old and such. But he still seems to got it to some extent, so we'll see what Crystal Palace decides to do with Roy Hodgson moving forward. He is intertwined with that club like vanilla ice cream and an ice cream scooper. So, it's very interesting to see what's going on there moving forward, but finally got one right. This feels good. Let's make it like a sub, get it on a roll, and see how this goes.
10th place. In 10th, this might be a little controversial, but I have Wolverhampton Wanderers. Yes, Wolves.
10th, Wolves. True position, 13th. Back to square one. So I got that one wrong too. I thought Wolves would finish in 10th. Literal Wolverhampton Wanderers finishing in 10th. They didn't quite finish in 10th, but there was a point in the season where they looked like they were going to get relegated. So 13th doesn't look too bad, all things considered.
9th place. 9th place, I have Aston Villa. Aston Villa.
9th, Aston Villa. True position, 7th. Another one wrong. You gotta love it. Now I'm 1 of 12 with my predictions. And for Villa, my predictions were really wonky. I think I was shrouded by the fact that I thought that Stevie G was going to magically turn Villa into a European contender. It wasn't him. They are kind of like a team that competed for Europe this season, but almost only due to the working of Unai Emery. Not really the best of times at Aston Villa for Steven Gerrard. I said that Aston Villa had the, quote, best summer transfer window. Villa, you're not helping me out here. Great season, some amazing performances, but dude, that's another one wrong. I'm at 1 out of 12. Do you know how bad that is? With getting 9th place wrong, I'm really hoping 8th place could turn it around for me. So let's see. Will I turn it around?
8th, Newcastle United. Yes, Newcastle, baby. I think Newcastle is about to have an absolute ripping season.
8th, Newcastle. True position, 4th. Newcastle in 8th, man? Come on. I really tried to outsmart the league with this list, I think, because Newcastle was really looking good towards the end of last season. And they had a great window, and at the time I was kind of just blind to it. I thought they'd have some hiccups with Eddie Howe. I thought the team wouldn't perform to a certain degree. And I just got it wrong. I got it flat out wrong. And I kind of regret it because Newcastle was really fun to watch this season, to be quite honest. I also predicted that Nick Pope would have a great season, which he exactly did. And then I also went on to state that I thought that Newcastle was going to sign a World Cup star in January. And now I'm one of 13. 13. One of 13. That hurts to say out loud because I thought I'd get 45, 70% right. One of 13? Like, damn. All right, let's keep it moving because I just need to get my next one right just to get some validation, just to get 10% of it right. That would be a massive feat at this point. For my first ever Prem predictions, getting 10% of it right with how poor I've been doing would be very worth it.
But I think West Ham will be 7th. Yeah. I had West Ham, I think... Yeah, I had them 8th or 7th last time around in my predictions. I am still confident that they're going to have a great season and that they're going to perform well. I think Moyes is doing really well for them.
7th, West Ham. True position, 14th. I got West Ham 7 positions ahead of where they actually finished. That's bad. West Ham, I thought were going to bring in some real dynamic signings. I thought Scamacca and Aguard were really good signings. I thought that Paqueta was a good signing, and I thought that he was going to be a big building block for them moving forward. And they kind of just forgot about the league. They just weren't thinking about it for vast portions of the season. And they were flirting with relegation at times, but now they're in the Conference League final and are kind of redefining, I guess, what success is for a Premier League team, especially a mid-table Premier League team in 2023, because, they're going all out for some silverware. They could be a European champion come end the season, but, they'll be in 14th in the Premier League. So it would be an interesting dynamic. They could get Europa League football next season, still West Ham. So it's hard to gauge their season, but position-wise, getting it 7 off is really poor from me. So let's keep moving. I'm 1 of 14. Can I be 2 of 15? Let's see.
This top 6 could blow some heads. So if you're upset with these, if you don't agree with me, feel free to take it out on me in the comments. But in 6th place, I have Manchester United. Yes, get your pitchforks out. I mean, if it wasn't obvious, my bias is there. I'm trying to be as down the middle and unbiased here, but obviously, we're all fans of a sport. And if you support a club, it's going to be hard not to be biased for them. Let's be honest. But I am gonna say a few things about Man United and Erik ten Hag that I genuinely believe. I think Erik ten Hag is the right man for the job, for what United really wants to do. They want to obviously get back challenging for the Premier League, Champions League, and all the cups, trophies that they can compete for.
This prediction is once again wrong. I'm 1 of 15 now, which sucks. But I did say some sensible things in my prediction. I thought Erik ten Hag was the right man for the job. I thought that Man United were, going for the youth revolution with Erik ten Hag, which is what they're kind of doing. I put a lot of emphasis on how I thought Ronaldo leaving in January was inevitable and how I thought it would hurt them. And it was inevitable, but if anything, they kind of benefited from it and found some consistency. And I said, United's going to be a team that's going to want to compete in all the competitions. And for the ones that they could have competed in, they've made it a decently far way along for a lot of them, even though you could kind of say that they probably deserved to put up a better fight against Sevilla. But Sevilla in the Europa League is, magic. So can't really blame them too much there. You know, they had a good season for their standards as of late, and you know, me predicting 6th, them getting 3rd, it's cool. You know, so far things are looking rough. So I'm 1 of 15. Really hoping it's not 1 of 16 with this next prediction, but gonna just dive into it and, you know, just feel things out, because I've been very kind of agitated about the fact that I haven't done so well, and I'm really hoping I get the next one right, because boy, this list has been rough.
Fifth place. I have Arsenal. Yes, the Gunners, Europa League. 5th is the new 4th, am I right?
5th, Arsenal. True position, 2nd. I said a number of great things about Arsenal in my predictions. I said that they play pretty football. I said Arteta is the best manager for identifying young talent in the league. I said that no one's doing it like him. Meanwhile, like, you got teams like Brighton and Brentford, you know, assembling teams who are competing for Europe. And that's not a dig at Arteta, but I was just so enamored with Arteta and everything about him in my predictions for Arsenal, but I still said they'd finish 5th. I doubted them. I was like the Arsenal fans at the start of the season who didn't think they could win the league, and obviously they didn't. But the belief I had in Arteta was so out of whack compared to where I predicted them to end up. And ultimately, like they had, you know, a good season for their standards that they set. It was a mixed season and ultimately an underwhelming season, I'd say, at the end of the day, because they didn't win the league. And to me, it's kind of like Arsenal were right there, and they were on top of the table for so long, and it's their first time up against City, and they didn't realize that, you know, even the slightest of hiccups and, you know, getting some draws here, some draws there, that adds up. You know, you lose one against City and you don't win some games, and automatically things are looking rough. So didn't get that one right at all. These predictions are awful. Like, I thought I gave it a really good crack, but so far they are really just bottom tier. So let's just see how I did with the top 4 and wrap this video up, because this has been torture so far.
In 4th, I have Tottenham Hotspur. Hotspur. Tottenham has had a hot spur of a transfer window.
4th, Tottenham. True position, 8th. So I thought Tottenham was another team that had one of the, quote, best windows of the summer, with signing, you know, Yves Bissouma, signing Richarlison. I thought that they were building something there. You know, they got in Jed Spence. To me, Tottenham seemed very competitive at the start of the season. You know, they had Antonio Conte, and I thought he was going to be there all season. I did say that there was a chance that he does up and leave, because that's just kind of the way things are with him. And he did do that, and their season kind of just capitulated. And that's not necessarily because he left, but he was just kind of generally a inconsistent sort of presence in the locker room while he was there. And then when he left, things really fell apart, because, you know, it was his assistant in charge and then Ryan Mason, and it just, the wheels fell off the whole thing. I thought Richarlison was going to score 10, assist 5, and I was like, yeah, it makes sense. Perfect, like, smart transfer by Tottenham. But he, like, scored, like, a goal, you know, so it wasn't really accurate with that at all. I mean, the position's wrong, if that needs to be stated at this point with how the list is going. I mean, almost every prediction's wrong, and almost every position's wrong. So that's really fun. But yeah, Spurs had not a top 4 season. They finished 8th. With 3 spots left, I only have 3 more chances to get a position right. So let's see, could I get my second accurate one right with the 3rd place position?
Number 3 for me is Chelsea. I have Chelsea 3rd because, you know, Koundé is set to come in, allegedly, unless Barca pulls another lever or something, God forbid. But Koundé is set to come in for Chelsea, as well as the fact that they've signed Raheem Sterling. They have Khalidou Koulibaly, who's came in, and ultimately, I feel like I don't know if they're gonna sign Frankie De Jong either. Similar to Man United, I know they've been in for him.
Third place, Chelsea. True position, 12th. Chelsea. 12th. They finished 9 places lower than I thought. 12th. Chelsea is an absolute circus right now. This past season was a whirlwind to see in footy. We very rarely see so much money thrown at a problem and have such terrible results. I mean, the amount of money invested into Chelsea over the summer and January, and they've had effectively 4 coaches, between Tuchel at the start, and then you had Graham Potter, then you had Bruno, and then you had Frank Lampard, and now it's Pochettino. So they've gone through like 5 managers in the last year, and it's been an absolutely wild ride. And I thought that the likes of Sterling and Koulibaly were gonna make an impact at Chelsea, and honestly, most Chelsea fans they would probably gladly sell those players now at this point in the season and at this point in their Chelsea careers. They just haven't really hit the ground running. And I thought for some reason that, Tuchel would stay there the whole season. He'd get, the first half of the season before the World Cup to kind of hash out his squad and then make some additional adjustments in January. That's not what happened. He got 3 weeks after the transfer window. Then Potter came in for 20 odd mil, and then he got sacked. And now Chelsea is just soul searching. Let's just say they're going through the motions. I think that's the joint highest place disparity between what I predicted and what actually happened. So that one really hurts. Thank you, Chelsea and Todd Bowley. So 2 more. Let's see. Can I get the next 2 right and kind of save myself some face?
Specifically, Liverpool and City are at a space where when I was making this and I was writing the list, in my head, I was like, well, 1 and 2 is Liverpool or City. It's just, it's going to be them. And if it's not them, I'd say that it's been an absolute colossal failure for whoever fails to get first in that 1-2.
Second, City. True position, first. Predicting City to finish second when they brought in Haaland, brought in Alvarez, they brought in a whole breadth of players. To get second is crazy. I was one of the early season Haaland haters who thought that he wasn't going to score 30 plus goals in the campaign, and he wasn't going to contribute to any sort of push in the Champions League, and it was going to be a rocky start, and it was going to be this, and it was going to be that. No, Haaland destroyed every Premier League record in front of him in terms of goal scoring. It was crazy. He's really just done a number this season and has been everything he's been hyped up to be. And honestly, from my perspective, some of the takes I had about Haaland and City and who was important was just baffling. One of the key things that stood out to me was this inclination I had towards thinking that Calvin Phillips was going to get minutes week in, week out. I don't know what possessed me to think that he was going to even be in the starting 11 or on the bench or even coming off the bench. But I thought, they got Calvin Phillips. He's going to come in and he's going to be okay, I guess. But, I don't think they should rely on him. They didn't rely on him at all. They didn't need him. And then I also thought that the absence of Sterling was going to create an offensive hole so large that Haaland wouldn't be able to fill those shoes that Sterling had left. I was concerned about Haaland's physicality and being able to push people in the Premier League. I thought that somebody like Connor Cody was going to snap him in 2. Am I insane? This is Erling Haaland we're talking about. I have one more shot at this. 1 of 20. First, Liverpool. True position, 5th. predicted Liverpool to win the title for this past season, and I really was misguided. I was talking about the signings of I talked about the signings of Nunez and Carvalho, like they were these integral pieces into our squad that were gonna revolutionize this. And while Nunez I think does offer a lot to the squad, I was like talking about like Calvin Ramsey and Carvalho potentially, being in the rotation and like coming in and out of games. And while the first half of the season had some of that, both of their Liverpool careers have taken really wayward turns. Carvalho's like on a permanent transfer most likely, and out of he's on his way out of Anfield now. Calvin Ramsey had knee surgery. He's God knows when he's back, and I mean Nunez. Nunez has been okay throughout the season. He's had his moments, but he's also had some injuries and he's kind of struggled to transition into the Prem. But I think it makes a lot of sense for him to struggle when our midfield for a good portion of the season was like Henderson, Fabinho, Elliott, and it was just super weak and lopsided, and Trent was getting skinned every other week, and it just didn't work. And honestly, I was blinded by bias. I'll admit it. I had this feeling that Liverpool, like, they don't need more midfielders. Like the biggest like hole in our squad for years and years didn't need to kind of get patched up. I think that was just kind of like a generally irresponsible take by me as a fan, because wow, like in retrospect this sounds absolutely goofy. Like it just doesn't make sense. To think Liverpool would get first when we were still running the same midfield that just played 60 games the season before. All of them aged the year, primarily Thiago, Fabinho, and Henderson, and obviously Milner as well. All of them were getting up further into their 30s, and that just kind of was a recipe for disaster for this season. I mean, obviously there's other things with Liverpool throughout the season that just kind of generally didn't go too well. I thought that I thought that Diaz and Jota would be more available. Obviously, they both had injuries and setbacks to said injuries that kind of kept them out. Thiago was gone for a vast duration of the season, so that kind of like impacted his kind of impact, I guess, on the team as a whole. And then on top of that, you had a lot of stuff that just made Liverpool's season very tumultuous. And I'd say that for how bad we were for certain parts of the season, fifth is a very, it's an acceptable finish, all things considered. But I will state that I said that if Liverpool or City finish outside the top three, it's a massive, massive failure of a season. So I guess according to me, this season's been a massive, massive failure for Liverpool. And I'd say while there are some successes, that statement is mostly true. And I hate to say it, but I kind of have been living with this thought of me, maybe like me making this prediction list and putting it up kind of jinxed the whole season. So lots to consider with more predictions coming as the season kind of approaches. We got some time, we got the transfer window. I'll be here updating, just as much as possible as I can over the summer transfer window, and putting out as much news content for people to consume and discuss. And yeah, so final recap, I tallied up how many like cumulative positions and places I was off, and it's not looking great. Collectively speaking, I was 86 places off with my predictions. I'll repeat, I was 86 positions off with my predictions. Like, collectively. That is terrible. So, 1 out of 20, one Champions League team accurate. So, 1 out of 20, one Champions League team. 1 out of 20, one top 4 team accurately predicted, one position accurately predicted, and one relegation team accurately predicted. 1 out of 20 positions getting predicted is the lowest I could get, I believe. Like, I just think that there's not a single spot, or the bar can't get any lower. I'd have to literally get everything wrong. So for this upcoming season, you could bet your bottom dollar I'm going to try to make it at least 2 out of 20. We're going to go for, 20 out of 20, but with the way that this one started, I don't know if it bodes too well for next year. But thank you so much for watching. If you liked the video, give it a like. Going to keep pumping out more content for you guys, and subscribe to stay tuned for more footy news and transfer speculation. So thank you once again. I'm Sideline Sato. Peace.